No kid's Jewish education should end at 13. Ajrba offers Ontario high school credits infused with Jewish learning online for teens across the province. Ministry approved, intellectually demanding, Jewishly transformative. Ajrba.ca. Your teen belongs here.
So in America, we've got the JAP. In Australia, we've got the JAP. In the UK, we've got either the JP, which is just Jewish princess, or Beck. And in South Africa, interestingly, it's the only country where they have a separate word for a Jewish prince and a Jewish princess. A Jewish princess is a Kugel, and a Jewish prince is a bagel.
There was recently an article in The Guardian celebrating New York's new mayor, Zoran Mamdani, for being, in effect, everything rich New York Jews hate. A line from the story jumped out at me, and this is a quote. Mamdani walks in an older Jewish tradition, not that of ritzy Upper East Side synagogues, but of so many of our great-grandparents, the socialist sweatshop workers who fought for a better and more beautiful world. End quote. So what struck me about that passage, and some others in the same piece, was how this figure of this ritzy Jew has become, and not just recently, this kind of all-purpose punching bag, even to other Jews. This got me thinking in an admittedly slightly tangential way about the Jewish American princess, the so-called JAP. So that will be our topic today. Should say, I'm Phoebe Maltz Bovy, opinion editor of the Canadian Jewish News, and you're listening to The Jewish Angle, a podcast from the CJN that looks at the complicated place of Jews, us princessy ones included, in today's cultural and political landscapes. And yes, today we are going to be talking about JAPs. It is a strange derogatory term in that it is a double slur. It is also a slur against Japanese people, along with being a gendered insult against Jewish women, which makes it more complicated to discuss, because if you want to reclaim it for one group, are you insulting another group? That's another whole level. There are many, many levels, many. But is it also, in the Jewish usage sense, a real type that exists in the world? Is it something that should be reclaimed? Is there a good side to it? Anyway, many angles. To help me unpack this phenomenon, I have on Becky Aizen. Is that correct?
It's more Aizen, like raisin.
It's more Aizen. Okay. Becky has been a social media mutual of mine for ages. She's originally from Australia and now lives in the UK. She's a writer and lapsed historian whose doctoral research was on stereotypes about Jewish women, including which one? The JAP. Yeah. And I believe you came on my radar because of you said that you referenced the nanny in your doctoral research. Is that, and I mean in your title?
Well, yeah. So I took a chapter title from Fran Drescher's autobiography, and used that as my thesis title, and that was like gefilte fish out of water, which I really liked as a phrase. At first, it's got the food in it. You need some Ashkenaz food, but also it spoke to the experience of being a fish out of water, and to be an Australian and a Jew, or a Jewish woman and also an Australian woman, it doesn't fit together nicely. It's not sort of a seamless identity, because Australian women are laid back and beach going, sporty and cool and blonde and tanned, and and Jewish women, we've been constructed, I'd say, somewhat differently, bookish, nerdy, or in multiple ways. And I guess the princess trope is another one that doesn't sort of fit with the Aussie, this sort of ideal Australian woman, because she's not materialistic and she's not aspirational, and she's very down to earth.
Yeah. So something I wanted to ask you about specifically, and first of all, thank you so much for being on. I realized I didn't start with that, but I am delighted because this is exactly it. So you made a post on Blue Sky that I think really got at something that I could relate to and understand, and I know is real in the world, which is, and I'm quoting you, you wrote, I consciously presented as a non-Jap when I was growing up. not like other girls, the Jewish version, end quote. I think that there is really something to that. This idea that, like, this is something Jewish girls stand accused of. I almost want to say no matter which sort of subculture,
Mm,
whatever, like it's always kind of in the background. So,
yeah.
but I do want you to unpack that more in the Australian context because I grew up in New York City where it meant kind of like meant not being from Long Island or something. You know what I mean? There were these tiny microscopic differences that
Yeah.
seemed huge,
Yeah.
So what did it mean in Australia?
Well, in Australia, it meant a type of person who dressed a certain way and wore certain labels. And in Australia, or in Melbourne, where I'm from specifically, the Jewish community there is quite unique in that Melbourne took in the largest number of Holocaust survivors of any city in the world outside of Tel Aviv. So a massive influx and a very, I don't know if holocausty is an adjective, but we're a pretty neurotic bunch. And there was a process in Australia, and I think it's common to a lot of diaspora Jewish communities, called voluntary re-ghettoization, where Jews will arrive in a place and then sort of stick together and sort of form community, sort of the recreation of the shtetl. And the shtetl life is still alive and well in 2026. In Melbourne, and I think that's why it's sort of been particularly hard to sort of see the tsunami of anti-Semitism that's really been turbocharged there the last couple of years. Why I'm giving this context is something like the stereotype or the trope of the JAP. It just feels like really fertile ground because first we're in a country where there's no Jewish Australian representation, like in my or very little. And in my thesis, if you look at the filmography, and I'm talking about representation of Jews on Australian television, there are 6 shows. America, I've got 36. So it's there's a massive sort of difference in terms of that. And so when we're kind of looking, and as a kid, I was very aware that being Jewish was a specific thing, and that it wasn't kind of represented in the culture. And so I kind of loved shows when I was little that had Jewish characters or Jewish references that were always from America. And
But like in daily life, I'm wondering, like, would people talk about would there be like, oh, that girl's a Jap? Was that something that people would
in
say?
in a massive way, in a really massive way that had really material results. So it was, I'm not going to that party because it's a Jappy party. I don't want to be friends with her because she's a Jap. At the same time, there was kind of admiration of the Jap and envy towards the Jap because the Jap, not even so much with material things, but there's a confidence to the Jap. There's not caring about the rest of the world or caring about other people in a way that, a sensitive, kid might.
Oh, I was just going to ask whether how aware you are of this in the UK, whether there's also this type of concern about the Jap.
Very interestingly, it's fitting that you're talking to me and not me as me. That's vain. I mean, me as in someone with my name. Do you know why?
No, I don't.
Because in England, there's no JEP, there's no Jewish English princess. They can't steal the acronym.
Well, there are actual princesses.
Yes, that is true. None of them are Jewish. The closest thing we have to a real Jewish princess, do you know who it is?
Kate Middleton?
Sophie Winkleman, who is an actress. She was in a show called Peep Show, and she's a sister of Claudia Winkleman, who's a very famous presenter here. She's married to Princess Michael of Kent's son. So, and
Aren't we all?
he's a cousin. So sorry for that tangent, but there you go.
No, it's okay. So it's fitting I'm talking to you. Is it the name Becky?
Yeah, it's Beck. A
Okay.
Jewish princess is a Beck. And I first heard the term in the early 90s. I was in Israel Machon with a group of English people, and they were discussing a woman they knew, and they said, oh, she's all right, but she's a bit Becky. And I was like, I thought it was a pejorative about my name, and they were saying she was like me, therefore not so great. And I sort of interrogated, oh no, Becky just means spoilt and sort of bitchy. Oh, is that all? I thought, So they said either JP or Beck. So Beck is the noun and Becky is Jappy, so the adjective. So in America, we've got the Jap. In Australia, we've got the Jap. In the UK, we've got either the JP, which is just Jewish princess, or Beck. And in South Africa, interestingly, it's the only country where they have a separate word for a Jewish prince and a Jewish princess. A Jewish princess is a Kugel, and a Jewish prince is a bagel. Kugels
Incredible.
do Yanta and Balabusta to be Jappy, I think. And also a bagel is more Yonic, so I find that an odd choice. But
Agreed. Yeah. Well, maybe that's the sort of emasculated thing, right?
possibly. Because
Yeah.
sorry, even though like it could be a Jewish prince or Jewish princess, what I have come to realize is a Jewish princess is blamed for being a Jewish princess, whereas the Jewish prince, whose fault is that?
Well, his mother, of course.
Obvious.
Yeah. In Canada, so I have looked into this because I also am trying to write something about this, and I needed to figure out, being at the Canadian Jewish News, living in Canada, being Canadian now also, what is in Canada. And I found some research project somebody did, like some dissertation or something like this, where a woman had done like field research about how young Jewish girls talk about these things, and Jewish American princess. American hegemony strikes again. I think it's just too close culturally and geographically, and the communities are too intertwined. Now, if you are listening and you are more deeply Canadian than I am, and you grew up in Canada and know the answer, or you just happen to know the answer and live anywhere in the world, and it's not what I think, and it's actually, there is a name, I am curious. But I wanted to talk about Fran Fine because I always do.
Yeah.
Check this out. Do I look like I'm ready for the Giants' shalom or what?
That's slalom, Miss Fine. And why did you buy a ski outfit when you don't even ski?
What ski? If I even make it out of the lodge in this, it's going back. I got you some gifties.
Thank you. What's all this for?
Oh, I was just down, so I decided to pick up a few little trinkets.
Fran, the man wants to know where to put the Solaflex.
Oh, does he look like the guy in the commercial?
Uh-huh.
I'll show him.
Is she a JAP? Because I have a theory about this, but I want to hear yours because you are a Fran Finologist. This is the protagonist, the main character, protagonist, I mean, it sounds so literary, on The Nanny, played by Fran Drescher.
Yeah. So when my friends in the UK were growing up, the JP and the Beck were synonymous. And I messaged a friend this morning and I just said, are your kids still using the terms JP or Beck? Like, is it still a thing? Expecting her to sort of say no because, or that it was watered down because, I don't know, maybe kids are a bit more woke and a bit more like might recognize that it's like or whatever. But what it turned out is that it's become problematized further, and JP and Beck actually mean two different things now. And the reason I'm saying it is because Fran fits into one category and not the other. And the reason that now it's been split into two categories, and if you sort of try and pick it apart, it's because of class. Because a Beck is a Jewish princess, but it's someone from like a macha family, someone from a successful family that everyone in the community knows, and maybe they've donated, a wing to a building. But either way, they're kind of like, even if you've never met that person, you've heard of them because they're, at all the parties and at all the things, and they know everyone and whatever. That person, that Beck, could be someone who, has all the nice clothes and whatever, but they can be down to earth. They can go to Glastonbury. They can care about climate change. They're kind of comfortable within their own skin. But at the same time, they might think they're really outward looking, but they're still in a sort of Jewish bubble. Whereas a JP is someone who is more grasping, who's more materialistic, who's closer, I guess, to the old stereotypes of the, acrylic nails and bleached hair and labels, and is much more sort of, looking for the like Jewish husband, kind of like much more closer to that stereotype. So you can kind of be a Beck and a JP. Like you can have crossovers, because what I couldn't understand, what I was sort of thinking is when people talk about Fran Fine as a Jap. And, if you look at her background, she was working at a bridal shop in Flushing, Queens when her boyfriend kicked her out in one of the... sorry, I couldn't help it. But
What was she to do? Where was she to go?
yeah, see, we can't say she was out on her fanny because that means something completely different. And
I know.
But anyway, so in that show, it is distinctly set up. What's the culture clash? Upper class and like working class, a highbrow, lowbrow, who's who. And it's the wasp, Maxwell Sheffield, who's at the top there. And then you've got Fran, who's, working class. And I guess, in a way, as you said, that she is lovable. It was a show that did exceptionally well. As in Australia, repeats of The Nanny sometimes tops, the prime time slots. And for me, that was validation. It was like, oh, they like us. They really like us. There was no other way to sort of gauge it. But it's an unusual, if you think about the dominant tropes that we have about Jews, it's that we're rich and we have money and we have power. And it's sort of interesting because one of the things when you read out that quote from The Guardian at the beginning, it really sort of annoyed me because it's like they're trying to cut us off from, or anyone who's got any issue with Zora Mamdani for any reason. They're trying to cut us off from our own history and our own, and that's our legacy. And we're not glitzy Jews, and maybe there are some Jews who are a bit glitzy. But I interviewed Letty Cotton Pogrebin, who's an American feminist, who a Jewish feminist, and she said to me that she resents the Jap stereotype because it's like she said a generation ago we were wearing rags on the Lower East Side, like why can't we have nice things almost like?
Well, yeah. I should say the author of the Guardian piece, Molly Crabapple, is Jewish herself. I had other unrelated issues with this article that I'm not going to go into because they don't have anything to do with the Jap. But I think there is something where they're like, it's never supposed to be a nice thing to be spoiled. But if you're spoiled and you're Jewish and you're a girl, it's suddenly like far, far more concerning, and it creates all these kind of neuroses. But yeah, the nanny I always found very interesting in that subversion, right? That it's not a rich Jew. It's rather the Jewish character is playing this kind of working class underdog, and it's not like it's anachronistic. Like that is, I grew up in very much where this is all taking place, and that obviously there were plenty of working class Jews, but the idea that the only wealthy people would be these WASPs, or let alone like recent arrivals from England, was interesting. But another thing that I'm thinking about is how whenever, so I'm a big fan, as you know, of Britcoms and of like the older Britcoms, and people will always say, oh, you can't get like keeping up appearances. You can't get the subtleties if you're American or if you're Canadian or something, because the British class system is so specific. And it's like, I get that, but at the same time, I think there is class. This exists also in North America. And which brings me to another cinematic on-screen, in this case, film representation of the Jap, which would be Cher Horowitz from Clueless.
Daddy's a litigator. Those are the scariest kinds of lawyers. Even Lucy, our maid, is terrified of him. And Daddy's so good, he gets $500 an hour to fight with people. But he fights with me for free because I'm his daughter. Daddy!
Cher, please, don't start with the juice again.
Daddy, you need your vitamin C.
Where's my briefcase?
It's been a couple months now, so I said we'd go out to Malibu.
Don't tell me those brain-dead lowlifes have been calling again.
They are your parents.
What I think is interesting here, and the reason I bring her up in conjunction with Fran Fine of The Nanny, is that here we have another likable Jap, but why? So Fran Fine is likable because she's not rich, she's not upper class, she's not in a position of power, she is the help in a fancy, ritzy Upper East Side home. Cher Horowitz is basically somebody who would not read as Jewish unless you sort of know what you're looking for. She's played by Alicia Silverstone, who is Jewish, but does not look stereotypically Jewish. And the character is played like this kind of materialistic, but also ditzy. And ditzy is not, the Jap is not ditzy. These are different, I think.
Yeah. See, I've actually been sort of looking again at what people are calling JAPs, and there was a short film on YouTube that was made a couple of years ago by The Take, and what I found watching it is the definition of the JAP is so much broader than the way that I sort of defined it when I was researching it. So, and I guess where I took my cues from was sort of how it was created. If you sort of look back to sort of the heyday of the JAP, which was the late 70s, early 80s, with the official JAP handbook and all of the merch that sort of went along with that. Even the fact that Fran is after Maxwell Sheffield, because one of the things with the JAP is, yes, they want a husband, they want a rich husband. But in my mind, it was always they want a rich Jewish husband. It's a Jewish lawyer, a Jewish doctor. So Fran going after, and even the mother, her mother pushing her to marry him or to get together with him isn't. It sort of de-Jewifies it a sort of tiny bit, or makes it sort of seem less JAP. And when comparing sort of Clueless and The Nanny, I'd say I don't know if Fran is a Jewish princess because she's not princessy enough, and I don't know if Cher Horowitz is a Jewish princess because she's not Jewish enough.
And absolutely. So, sorry, go on.
So I get your point. So what do we know that she's Jewish? That the surname is Horowitz. Her father.
They have a mezuzah.
Oh, do they? I didn't notice.
They do. It's subtle. I rewatched it recently, and yeah. And I mean, the creator's Jewish, and it's like one of these things where it's to me, this seems very mid-90s. That makes sense to me. This kind of like George Costanza on Seinfeld, like Jewish if you're Jewish, not Jewish if you're not, like kind of hovering. But there was another TV character, though, who I'm going to have to mention because the music is likely to pop up.
It's in my
Rebecca
head.
Bunch.
Every
from
time,
Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Sorry, every time you've said Jewish American princess, I have Jewish American princess.
A Jewish American princess.
Rap battle.
Daughters of princess.
Spit mad flow.
Barnet from offensive.
Too bad, yo, oh, snap. It's a JAP battle rap.
That song is amazing. But again, when you're talking about the classic Jewish American princess.
She's not a JAP Rebecca Bunch at all, is she?
Yes, and if she ever was one, it was in that first episode where you see her in her suit and she's the lawyer and she's the go-getter. But even that's not the JAP either, because one of the key things when the JAP first came about, and my thesis was sort of, early 2000s, so there's a lot about the Jewish female body, which is now a bit kind of passe. But I talked about sort of the body of the JAP as being to be adorned, but it doesn't produce, it doesn't labor, it doesn't, all of the jokes about the JAP, are to do with her being, sexless. Like how can you tell when a JAP's had an orgasm? Is she drops her nail file. And actually that gets extended to jokes about Jewish women, not JAPs, because there are jokes like, what's the difference between Catholic women and Jewish women? Catholic women have real diamonds and Catholic women have fake diamonds and real orgasms.
It's interesting because the JAP kind of displaces the previous stereotype of the belle juive, the beautiful Jewess, who was supposed to be like particularly sensual and sexual. And that was actually, my own dissertation was partly on those, but in 19th century France. And I remember being stunned because I grew up hearing all these stereotypes about the frigid Jewish woman. And I was like, wait, we were supposed to be the opposite. That was so weird that it just switched. And obviously people are people. I'm sure Jewish women come in all types. When I think about the JAP on screen, I suppose I think of something like Janice from Friends would be the sort of classic older example, who's just this kind of like repugnant to men, sort of like the girlfriend who needs to be an ex-girlfriend. She's just like horrible, unappealing.
Squeeze your legs together and cover the baby's ears.
Sweetie. Hi, sweetheart. This is my husband, Sid. I don't think you've met him. Ross, Rachel, this is Sid. I nabbed him a year ago at the dermatologist's office. Thank God for adult acne, huh?
I still can't believe it. I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
Really?
But then I was thinking like, but that's such an old example. There must be more recent. And then I realized, of course there is. Nobody Wants This. The show about a rabbi who falls in love with his, shiksa, whatever. We can do scare quotes. The whole episode, just put scare quotes around the whole thing. Very much contrasts materialistic conventionally feminine non-Jewish women with materialistic, conventionally feminine Jewish women. And there's something where once you add Jewish, it's like a whole different thing. And is there something there?
Well, I think there's a long tradition of that. If you look at, I think, the 70s, the film The Heartbreak Kid, which Ben Stiller later did a remake of, and the whole thing of that is, this Jewish guy just gets married to this Jewish wife, and she's all of the negative stereotypes about Jews, and then he meets this gorgeous shiksa who's Sybil Shepherd, and falls in love, and I think you can see the roots that there's Portnoy's complaint in there, and I think that's once if we're looking at sort of tropes around Jewish women and as unattractive, one of them is okay, so the shiksa is a negative construction, is a negative stereotype about non-Jewish women within Jewish communities, because it's like, there's something very disposable about a shiksa. She's not a real person.
Yeah.
But she's quite objectified. But at the same time, so often this idea that the perfect woman is the kind of what society said is the Sydney Sweeney, and so the Jewish woman by comparison just looks really sort of seems gross by comparison.
When I thought about this, trying to like zoom out and look at it, it seems like what one looks at in the switch from the sort of Belle Juive stereotype to the JAP stereotype is whether the main people creating stereotypes about Jewish women are non-Jewish men or Jewish men. I mean, so there's been a ton of like historical research on, the origin of the JAP stereotype. I mean, the one I always go back to is Paula Hyman, Gender and Assimilation in Modern Jewish History, because she basically talks about how stereotypes about Jews would get kind of like some Jewish men would kind of turn those stereotypes around and just make them be about Jewish women. And that was kind of where this came from. And there was one other thing, though, that I just want to make sure we mentioned, because this came up. So I was listening to a 2018 Tablet podcast about the JAP, which is interesting for a variety of reasons, including 2018 being kind of a different time for Jews than 2026. But there was an audience question from a woman who had a very, like, there are all these guests, they're talking about all these interesting sort of facets of this, whatever. And then there's this question of like, is the JAP a bullied personage or a bully?
Yeah.
And that made me think about my own first experiences with this term. When I first learned the term was in the context of girls who had been mean to me at a summer camp. And I came home and explained what had happened and that they had given me a hard time about, that my shirts clashed with my shorts. They said that I didn't coordinate.
How old were you?
I was 8. Oh. I still clashed. I don't care. Yeah. No, but like it was. But I remember trying to explain this. I came home and I was like, these girls, they said that my clothing clashed. I don't even know what they mean by this. Like I don't even. Yeah. It wasn't that they even thought I was like poor, or maybe they did. I don't know what they thought. They just thought I was strange for things that I'd never heard of to care about. And it was in that context that I first learned of this concept. And I learned of it as kind of like this was like a mean girl. It was almost like a mean girl, but Jewish.
So did I think, because I learnt about it all. It was this Jewish school and they were rich and they were snobbish and they thought they were better than everyone. And they were also allowed to do things. So like when we were in primary school, we weren't allowed to catch the tram into the city. And they seemed to be allowed, to do things that, that we weren't allowed to do yet.
Becky Aizen, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Truly come back anytime. This was
I'd love
incredible. Thank you for listening to The Jewish Angle, a podcast from the Canadian Jewish News. This has been Phoebe Maltz Bovy, opinion editor of the CJN and a contributing editor of Scribe Quarterly, the CJN's print magazine. The show is produced and edited by Michael Fraiman. Our music is by Frank Freeman. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to The Jewish Angle wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.